Nobody's given me this kind of power before. Thank you very much, and I'm going to talk very fast tonight because I've got a lot that I want to convey to you. But let me just start by saying that I am very honored to speak to you tonight because RING is truly one of the great success stories in our fight to stop Agenda 21. And you know, you guys are the watchmen. You have done something here that has been that's historic and has not been done in many places around the country. What you accomplished is a great inspiration to activists around the nation, and it's a valuable training tool. You know, you saw a problem and you took effective action to stop it, and I salute you for it. But at the same time, what we're learning around the country is that one victory is not a victory, a total victory. The people who are perpetrating these policies will stop at nothing. And they will change the words, they will change the names, they will change the way they come about it. And when you call them on it, they're going to say, well, this isn't that, this is this. And they're George Orwell and doublespeak, they're very good at it. So what I'd like to do tonight, because I spread, I work around the country with people who are fighting the same battles, and I see what happens time and time again. I'd like to just go over some things that we know to give you a little bit more strength and conviction and understanding when you see some of these things come up, and help you to keep the battle going. You know, the Southern Poverty Law Center says, quote, Agenda 21 is not a treaty. It has no force of law, no enforcement mechanism, no penalties, and no significant funding. It is not even a top-down recommendation, seeking instead to encourage communities around the world to come up with their own solutions to overpopulation, pollution, poverty, and resource depletion. It is a feel-good guide that cannot force anyone, anywhere to do anything at all. So you can all go home. You know, today, around the nation, if a citizen goes into a local government meeting to ask questions and mentions Agenda 21, local planners, and I'm sure you guys experience this, non-governmental organizations and elected officials will give you the same eye roll of disgust, and they'll dismiss everything you say about Agenda 21, claiming all of their plans are local. But isn't it interesting to note that up until about the mid-2000s, no one was saying Agenda 21 was a right-wing fringe fantasy? Well, you know what? Here's some history. In 1992, 50,000 delegates made up of 179 heads of state, diplomats, business leaders, government bureaucrats, and members of thousands of non-governmental organizations, private organizations with their own political agenda, all converged on Rio de Janeiro to introduce to the world a document that they called a comprehensive blueprint for reorganizing human society. And then Nancy Pelosi introduced the idea into the U.S. Congress that fall after the Earth Summit, calling it what? A comprehensive blueprint. I've got the video on it's a C-SPAN video on my website, you can watch it. The UN, in one of its own publications in 1993, described Agenda 21 this way, quote, Agenda 21 proposes an array of actions which are intended to be implemented by every person on Earth. It calls for specific changes in the activities of all people. Effective execution of Agenda 21 will require a profound reorientation of all humans unlike anything the world has ever experienced. End quote. In 1994, the American Planning Association, one of the largest and respected around the country planning groups, put out a newsletter in 1994 calling Agenda 21 what? a comprehensive blueprint. In 1997, the United States issued a 70-page report to the United States, issued it to the United Nations on the progress the U.S. was making to implement Agenda 21. It says it right on the cover of it. In 1998, the Federal Register issued a report on the EPA's Challenge Grant Program. That report says, quote, the EPA's Challenge Grant Program is also implementation of Agenda 21. And in 2011, the EPA issued a revised report entitled History of Sustainability. It details how the EPA policy on sustainable development was created. The fifth item on that report is Agenda 21, calling it a comprehensive process of planning and action to attain sustainability. And on it went about Agenda 21. The blueprint, the plan, the consensus, the direction for changing how people live. Here was the plan for the 21st century. They were quite proud of it. In fact, it wasn't until the mid-2000s that such pride started to change to denial and charges of conspiracy theories. Why? What happened? Well, that was when I and Hal Shurtleff and several others around the country began to reveal the truth about Agenda 21 and sound the alarm bells. And a few years later, thousands of concerned Americans in cities all over the country started to ask questions. They started coming into public meetings, these consensus meetings that are nothing but psychology to lead you to a certain place, preconceived outcome. Suddenly, the sustainable development movement became hard-pressed to remember anything like that. Never heard of it, went the cry. In fact, the entire environmental movement, officials in government, planning groups, and NGOs went suddenly dumb. Now, where have we seen such a unified dumbness in recent times? You remember last year when some videos suddenly appeared showing an arrogant little twerp named Jonathan Gruber telling his audience that the way they got Obamacare through Congress was because of the stupidity of the American people? He said, quote, lack of transparency is a huge political advantage. And when those Obamacare-related videos caused a sensation across the country, remember the response from Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid and Barack Obama? Never heard of him. He had no official capacity, according to Nancy Pelosi. Yet Pelosi had introduced him as the key expert on the Obamacare plan. He had been to the White House more than 40 times, and they paid him 7 figures to get it through. Well, that same tactic has been used against us on the Agenda 21 issue for years. There is no plan, they tell us, just some old ideas from a meaningless document. So, in the mid-2000s, we began to score victories against Agenda 21. The other side panicked. They had controlled the issue for so long they didn't know what to do when we started to expose them. So they launched attacks against us, all designed to discredit us. The American Planning Association worked to retrain its planners in how to deal with us, removing the use of common words to describe it. And I'll tell you what, I've got a document here I'm not supposed to have. This is an internal document of the American Planning Association called Glossary for the Public. Here's the first paragraph. Given the heightened scrutiny of planners by some members of the public, what is said or not said is especially important in building support for planning. And they go down through saying, just make it a conversation. Just get through it. And then they have a list of words. Don't use these anymore because it makes the critics see red. Words like livable, localized planning, public visioning, public-private partnerships, smart growth, stakeholders, sustainability. I have joked that eventually the American Planning Association is going to have to start doing their presentations using sign language because they'll have no words left. They have a myths and facts section to their website, which boldly claims the American Planning Association has no connection with Agenda 21. A planner and an advisor to Bill Clinton, his name was J. Gary Lawrence, told his fellow planners, quote, "Participating in a UN-advocated planning process would very likely bring out many right-wing conspiracy groups who would actively work to defeat any elected official undertaking local Agenda 21, so we will call our process something else, such as comprehensive planning, growth management, or smart growth." And so they have, and I'll bet you, as you guys started to research what was happening right here in Ringe, some of those words popped up. In the most recent Southern Poverty Law Center attack against me, it scolds local officials for paying any attention to people like me. In complete exasperation, the Southern Poverty Law Center demanded that the business community, the Chamber of Commerce, local governments, and the news media, quote, "stop reporting on Agenda 21 as if it were a bona fide controversy." Further, it demanded that communities, quote, "need to be encouraged to return to or start to develop such plans in tandem with responsible groups like the American Planning Association." In other words, stop questioning these plans and just shut up and do it. Now ask yourself, what plan? The Southern Poverty Law Center just told us, they assured us that there isn't a plan, remember? The fact is, Agenda 21 does exist, and it is being enforced at every level of government. Now it's true that Agenda 21 is not a treaty, and it is not a law. The proper term for Agenda 21 is a soft law policy. That means that it is true that the plan in itself has no enforcement capability, and it is true that there are no blue-helmeted troops at City Hall. That's my favorite one. So why is it a threat? And how did it get into your community? To understand the true threat of Agenda 21, you must first understand that it is not an environmental policy or just a good idea for planning for future development for the communities. Agenda 21 is a threat to our nation, to our local community, to you, because it is a comprehensive blueprint specifically designed to change our way of life and our form of government. That is its true purpose. That is why they call it an agenda. Now, for anyone who thinks that these are just my radical nut right-wing kook side, kind of side talking, let me stop using my words and let them tell you how they openly plan for this non-existent plan to transform your society. Here's some examples that they've provided. This is from the UN Biodiversity Assessment Report on what is not sustainable. Ski runs, grazing of livestock, plowing of soil, building fences, industry, single-family homes, paved and tarred roads, logging activities in reservoirs, power line construction, and economic systems that fail to set proper values on the environment. What is that? Free enterprise. Think about that. All of those things are not sustainable. That means ban them. Out in the West, they're already banning whole towns, banning paved and tarred roads, taking away water rights, making it impossible to live on the land, step by step by step. The purpose in all this is to herd you into a specific area and leave all the rest of it basically a vast wasteland. There's a lady named Christiana Figueres. She is Executive Secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And she said this in 2012, quote, "What is occurring here in the whole climate change process is the complete transformation of the economic structure of the world." And just 2 months ago, she said this, "This is the first time in the history of mankind that we are setting ourselves the task of intentionally, within a defined period of time, to change the economic development model that has been reigning for at least 150 years since the Industrial Revolution. Al Gore said in his book, Earth in the Balance, that our nation must go through a wrenching transformation in order to cleanse us from the horrors of the 20th century Industrial Revolution. You know, the part that gave you indoor plumbing and electricity and all those kind of things. At the UN's Rio Plus 20 Summit in 2012, where they were celebrating that which does not exist, Agenda 21, 20 years of it, the main theme of their plans called for zero economic growth. Think about that. Zero economic growth. Barack Obama is really good at that. They're having that. Let me give you one little side thing here. You take a look at history. Alexander the Great and Thomas Jefferson's worlds moved at essentially the same speed. They had horses for transportation, they had light, they had candlelight to light the home, they had a few improvements, but basically everything moved at the same speed. Along comes 1890 something, three guys come into the world, actually four guys come into our world. Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, and the Wright brothers. And what did they do? This well-organized society that we knew what to expect tomorrow suddenly got thrown out the window. They gave us light inside our homes, they had us driving something besides horses, and they had us flying in the air. The proponents, the perpetrators of Agenda 21 want to make sure that never again in their well-ordered society will we ever have Thomas Edison and Henry Ford or the Wright brothers to upset the apple cart. And that's what the whole purpose of our education system is about, to bring that about. Naomi Klein, writing in The Nation magazine, the left-wing magazine, wrote in 2011, quote, "So, when people like Tom DeWeese react to climate change as if capitalism itself were coming under threat, it's not because they're paranoid, it's because they're paying attention." They tell us every day what their plans are. We're not listening. Killing capitalism is the real goal of Agenda 21. But that can't be the purpose behind local planning. Now, can it? Good folks just trying to do something for the community, our local officials assure us that their plans are all local. Well, the American Planning Association is the largest and most respected planning group in the nation. They are operating in almost every single community. The American Planning Association is part of the Planners Network. You can go on the website, you can see plannersnetwork.com and read their statement of principles. This is what it says. "We believe planning should be a tool for allocating resources and eliminating the great inequalities of wealth and power in society, because the free market has proven incapable of doing this." This is what every planner in America believes. And so that's what's incorporated in every plan and every program that they're putting in your communities. And think about that. A tool for allocating resources. We will control it, not you. Water, energy, anything like that, we will decide whether you use it. Inequalities of wealth and power, that is social justice. That is redistribution of wealth. And right now, Barack Obama has issued an executive order through HUD to take every single neighborhood in this country and social engineer it to where you have the proper diversity in that neighborhood of people of economic levels, certain ethnic groups, and so forth. That is being done right now. And that is what that says in that statement of principles. So, what is the purpose of Agenda 21 of Sustainable Development? Author Ted Traynor explains how and why to impose the local process, as he described in his book, Transition to a Sustainable and Cannot Be Reformed to Make It Sustainable or Just. It must be largely replaced. by a society with fundamentally different structures. Local planning focuses on curtailing energy and natural resources and land use. And then he goes on to say, what then is the most effective transition strategy? The essential aim is not to fight against consumer capitalist society, but to build the alternative to it. And that goes hand in hand with the American Planning Association's philosophy for the public. Don't fight it. Offer the alternative. Quote, nothing of lasting significance will be achieved unless it is clearly understood that our efforts and these local initiatives are the first steps to the eventual replacement of the present society by one which is not driven by market forces, profit, competition, growth, and influence. Have you seen what has happened in just the last few weeks in America? The Supreme Court decisions that have been handed down, every one of them is designed to rip our culture to shreds. Agenda 21. What they're talking about here is social justice, redistribution of wealth. You know the first person to coin that term is Karl Marx. And by the way, Ted Traynor is an avowed Marxist. Starting to see a pattern here? And still, local proponents, planning groups, planning departments, and elected officials deny any such connections to their planning programs, even as they vote to impose these plans with these same planners. Now let me tell you, I'm telling you of the UN connection because that is history. It's important to know the driving force behind such ideas if you want to clearly understand their roots. But what we all need to really focus on is how they are imposing Agenda 21 at every level of government. You know, in this world of sound bites, trying to take this massive issue and bring it down to a sound bite is very difficult, but I have managed to bring it down to this. There are three main plans of attack that they are using against us to impose Agenda 21. One, destroy private property ownership and control. Two, impose regional councils and governments, taking government further away from the people, non-elected regional councils and governments. And three, feed the plan with federal grant money. Here is the exact course that brought Agenda 21 to America through Congress, through your state legislature, through your county and city government, and into your backyard. After those over 50,000 world leaders, non-governmental organizations, government bureaucrats, 179 heads of state signed agreement to Agenda 21, the policy then gained huge momentum when in 1993, President Bill Clinton issued Executive Order 12852 to create the President's Council on Sustainable Development to make Agenda 21 official U.S. policy. That's where it started. Suggestion by the UN, law through the U.S. Congress. Then, those same NGOs who wrote Agenda 21 at the international level converged on our government and helped to write the federal policies. Most importantly, they helped to write grant programs. The grants through HUD, and EPA, and the Department of Transportation, and nearly every other agency in the federal government are the Kool-Aid used to spread the policy across the nation. They tell you that grants are just voluntary. Hey, you don't have to take them. Well, in a sense, that's true, except that there's massive pressure by those NGO groups, these representatives of these agencies and so forth, take the money. If you don't take the money, they will go into the community and they'll say, your elected officials are costing you millions of your tax dollars. And they put the pressure on, and finally elected officials go, I got to do it. And I've heard this said many, many times. What choice do I have? Stand up and say no. That's what you do. A few examples include restrictions on energy use, development, building codes, and water controls. The rules impose guidelines created on the international level for building materials, built plumbing codes, electric codes, installing bike lanes, building apartment buildings with no parking lots. Can you imagine that? An entire apartment building with no parking lots. Why? Because we don't want any cars here, and the more difficult we make it for you, you'll stop driving, and you'll get on the bus, or you'll ride your bike. That is planned ahead of time. After creating such programs, the same NGOs have headed to your state legislatures and lobbied for legislation that forced pretty much every community to impose comprehensive development plans. Now you've got city councilmen and county commissioners saying, what the heck is a comprehensive development plan? In walk the NGOs, and they go, don't worry about it. Got it all right here in a box for you. You don't have to even think. You know what? Got the money too. It's all right here. Done. Step by step, city by city. Then, as your local communities were faced with that task, how they came in with it, in the back rooms of City Hall and the state legislatures, your government officials work hand in hand to write policy with the very NGOs who created Agenda 21 in the first place. And this is an important fact. We're talking about private organizations. The Sierra Club, the Nature Conservancy, the Audubon Society, ICLEI, the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, the American Planning Association, and a huge number of others. You know what they all have in common, along with the National Conference of Mayors and organizations for city councilmen and county commissioners and state legislators? Every one of these is a private organization, probably a 501c3 organization. They don't have any power, they don't have any influence, except for one reason. Your elected officials give it to them. And the way to stop that is to elect new elected officials who don't give it to them. It will dry up and blow away because it's all they've got. This is a secret that they're hiding under all their pretty words about livable communities and smart growth. And what are the results of this internationally created, federally funded, state-enforced assault on your local community and your home? Property rights across the country are disappearing. Energy is being tightly controlled. Jobs are disappearing. Community development means pack and stack high-rise housing, and bike paths are jamming our roads. Unused bike paths in most cases. I have yet to see somebody riding on one of them. But this is all part of the grant. You take a grant all you want to do is pave Main Street. Oh, you can pave Main Street, okay. But you've got to have a bike path over here. You can only use this kind of materials. You have to do this. You've got to cut back. And have you seen this in the cities? I don't know what this is about. They now have in many cities you backing into parking spaces instead of pulling in frontwise. Richmond, Virginia, I've seen this. Part of the grant. Private property rights, as I said, are disappearing. We have wetlands, conservation easements, watersheds, view sheds, rails to trails, biosphere reserves, greenways, carbon footprints, partnerships, preservation, stakeholders, land use, environmental protection, development, diversity, visioning, open space, heritage areas, and comprehensive planning. These are all part of the new language of government. The function of legitimate government, your elected government, within the sustainable system is fast becoming little more than a rubber stamp to create and enforce the dictates of something called stakeholder councils, run by, you guessed it, the same NGOs who wrote Agenda 21 in the first place. What we're talking about here is the demise of representative government. And the councils appear and grow almost overnight. You never heard of them. All of a sudden, you got watershed councils that regulate human action against every trickling stream, river, or meter, or lake. Meters are put on wells. Special action councils control home size, tree pruning, or removal. Even the color you paint your home or the height of your grass, in many cases. Historic preservation councils control development in downtown areas, disallowing expansion and new building. Let me explain something to you. Conservative Americans love our history. We love reading about it, we love knowing about it, we love honoring it. Historic preservation councils are the way they sucker you in to get into this. Oh, this is to preserve this. This is for... You start looking around in Waterloo, Iowa. There is nothing historic that ever happened in downtown Waterloo, Iowa, but they got huge grants for historic preservation of downtown. Drive across the country and see how many historic downtowns there are, where nothing ever happened. That's how they suckered you in. Once these councils are established, it becomes much more difficult to discuss issues with your elected officials. Instead, they will automatically refer you to the proper council or administration or department run by unresponsive appointed hacks, armed with their own political agenda. Now this brings us back to the UN connection and our concern about it. The UN Commission on Global Governance said, quote, "Regionalism must precede globalism. We foresee a seamless system of governance from local communities, individual states, regional unions, and up through the United Nations itself." Seamless. Is it then a coincidence that regionalism is becoming the fastest growing change in how our government is operating? If you try to challenge the legitimacy of the regional councils to make such policy, you will be told that there are elected officials on them. Yes, there are. In many cases, there are city councilmen and county commissioners on a regional planning commission or a regional government. But they weren't elected to that board. You elected them to represent you here. And they can work behind the scenes there independently and not care what you think because you didn't elect them to be there. Ask yourself, why does it seem so difficult today to deal with government and to get them to listen to you? Because they don't care. They make their plans in the back rooms out of sight and out of reach of the people. Of course, they would never put it that way. The New York Association of Regional Councils describes their mission this way: regional councils were created to provide a regional approach to concerns that cross the lines of local governments' jurisdictions. These councils are a vehicle for local governments to share their resources and to make the most of funding, planning, and human resources. They tell us that they are, many times that they're voluntary, they don't legislate, that they, answer to representatives that you've elected in the community. They're passing more and more of these regulations, creating these things that are allowing them to legislate, are allowing them to apply for grants, are allowing them to do things outside of the purview of what they were supposed to do. They tell us it's just a discussion. That description that they share resources and make the most of funding and planning all human resources is a direct description of top-down control. Plans made for you. Human resources? Is that what you are? Are you a human resource cog in the wheel? Or are you a person? Are you an American citizen? Are you an individual? A human resource. You get monkeys to do that. Here's how it really works. Communities across the nation are being pressured by federal agencies like HUD, EPA, Department of Transportation to accept these grants that we've discussed before. They come with these strings attached. Nothing you do with the government is free. What they tell individual elected representatives, if you have a city councilman, for example, that maybe goes to them and says they want to do something, they'll have a representative, a government representative, federal representative say, hey, we can take some of these regulations off of here. We can fix this, we can fix that for you. They can do anything they want. And so now the local official comes back and says, it's okay, it's cool. Don't worry, we can do this. We don't have to abide by all that stuff. And that's how they sucker you in. It's a trap. Agencies of the federal government are learning how this regional concept works that helps them very quickly enforce their plans. And they are rapidly moving to expand this new model of collaboration. HUD, Department of Transportation, EPA are now also working with, get this. And you think, okay, HUD, Department of Transportation, EPA, Environment. This is this group of agencies that they're working directly with other grants. Department of Agriculture, the Department of Defense, the Department of Education, the Department of Energy, Health, and Human Services, the Economic Development Administration, FEMA, General Services Administration, The National Endowment of the Arts. I just learned yesterday how that's done. They put on plays. They fund plays that have the proper environmental message, the proper sustainable message, so that we see this. Oh yeah, we all start to think the same way. These are clever guys, aren't they? So, in this process, they simply align agency priorities and embed the livable principles into each agency's actions so that transportation, housing, and environmental protection efforts are coordinated. In June of 2010, HUD opened the applications process for a $100 million Sustainable Communities Regional Planning Grant Program. EPA has engaged HUD and Department of Transportation in a Smart Growth Implementation Assistance Program. And you got planners who are putting smart growth. It's just a local plan. Really? Are you part of the EPA's Smart Growth Implementation Assistance Program? Ask them. And I told you about what they're doing with HUD with diversity. This is what local officials are telling you is a local plan. Does that sound local to you? Every plan is the same across the nation. How does that fit into your unique situation? It doesn't. This top-down control is the perfect description of a Soviet. And that is what sustainable development is. That is what the comprehensive blueprint is in action. That is what regional planning really is. Where is there room for your wants and needs, and hopes and dreams? All groups, like ICLEI and the American Planning Association, they all guide the process. Voluntary guidelines announced to reduce energy use quickly becomes mandatory regulations as dictated through the grant programs. And as we expose these programs, proponents start to change the name, not the plan. They change the name all the time. Every time we get into a pattern, we're beginning to expose things. Like I told you about the glossary for the public, change the name. Same program, different name. You know, all over the country and around the world, the same plans are being put in place. You want a hint how to know what plan is this? They all come with numbers usually ending in something like 2050 or 2030. And they, if you go on the internet, you will find Jamaica 2050, Dubai 2050. Now, if you want to really upset the apple cart, download some of these plans. And when somebody's having a facilitated meeting, the public coming in to discuss Agenda 21, come in with these in your hand and just say, excuse me, did you write this plan? Oh yeah, this is all local. Hey, the mayor and we had Chamber of Commerce, everybody was involved in writing this. Really? Well, I got Dubai 2050 here, and it says verbatim what your plan says right there. Is that just a coincidence, sir? Yeah. You want to upset the apple cart? Start doing that. Smart growth planners promote these schemes by insisting that Americans live the wrong way. And they use land use regulations to impose on others what they insist is the right way to live. Says the EPA's promotional materials, quote, the layout of a city or county and access to public transportation can hugely affect the carbon footprint and overall sustainability of the region. Imagine how we would all have gotten here tonight if we had to take public transportation. And so it goes around the nation. As these policies take shape, some residents are starting to figure it out. These plans enforced by non-governmental, non-elected NGOs and bureaucrats and much more. It's just it's not just a good idea for the future. They tell you that the public has its input in here. Well, take this example from Providence, Rhode Island. They had a hearing. The room was full of angry people who did not want this plan, and they said so. And it's called Roadmap Rhode Island. They're so clever with these names. The response was that the government implemented it unanimously, put it in place. They didn't care what people thought. So, I can go on here for a long time. You know, I mentioned that in San Francisco that they are building residential apartment buildings without parking lots. When you see that they talk about these programs, they talk about livable and healthy communities. Have you heard these? Livable and healthy communities. Interesting, in San Francisco, they just built a couple years ago what they said was the greenest, most sustainable building. It was a new government building in the country. Healthy communities. What does it mean? The elevator in this building only stops at every 3rd floor. Now why? Because now you have to walk up the steps. That's healthier. The bikeways, ride your bike, that's healthier. That's what they mean. That is a code word, healthier. What do you think it means? So we don't have rat-infested, buildings and so forth? Oh no, no. You could have to jump over the rats. That's okay, but that's healthy. You know, you go to Portland, Oregon, you can fly over the city and you can see the division. Smart growth plan, all open space city. Here's what they do with smart growth. They put a line around the community and they say no development will take place outside of this line. Now you have a small area, a unchangeable area there. What happens inside that area? Populations start to grow. It's natural. It's what happens. Now, like they did in Portland, all of a sudden we can't afford to have single-family homes in the suburban area. We need to make them all apartment buildings. And then the population continues to grow. We need to change the density figures so that just a couple of levels on an apartment building is not enough. We need to have high-rises going to the sky. It's the only place you can go. You can't go out, you got to go up. It's what we call stack and pack. That's where it comes from. That's what they mean for it. Now you're sitting here in Ridge and you're thinking, not here. One of two things will happen in Ridge in the future. Either one, they will squeeze you out so you don't exist anymore, or if your population begins to grow, then suddenly you will start seeing these stack and pack regulations coming in.
Over my dead body.
They just keep increasing the urban density. You know what? We can put all the people in the world in an area the size of Texas. Every time I say this, Texans get mad at me. We don't want them, I say. But as an example, everybody can fit in this area the size of Texas with a density, population density of Paris, France. Are we overcrowded? No. We have poverty and teeming, downgraded cities and so forth in this world because we have bad government. Government that will not allow individuals to own private property. Private property ownership is the key to eradicating poverty. Do you know that 60% of the companies in this country were started by mom and pops using the equity in their property to start it and fund it? 60% of the people in this country work for those companies? That's an astounding figure. Private property. As we're seeing these regulations start to grow, we're starting to see less and less private property. And what are we feeling in America? We're starting to feel more poverty. The middle class is beginning to disappear. And that is sustainable development. That is what we're up against, and that's why we're trying to stop it. It's all a lie. And one thing I want to leave you with here, it's very interesting. The American Planning Association a few years ago decided to do a study to see if smart growth policies really worked. You know what they found out? It doesn't. Here is the final concluding paragraph to that report. Quote, "The current planning policy strategies for land use and transportation have virtually no impact on the major long-term increases in resource and energy consumption. They generally tend to increase costs and reduce economic competitiveness. In many cases, the socio-economic consequences of less housing choices, crowding, and congestion may outweigh the very modest CO2 reduction benefits," end quote. Haven't heard that on the news, have you? I got a copy of it, though. And what, does this mean that the APA is going to start to change its programs? Not on your life. Why? There aren't any grants for the opposite. That's their lifeblood. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why I and thousands of other Americans are so concerned. Nameless, faceless bureaucrats wielding power in the back rooms, untouchable and unseen, is not freedom. Agenda 21 proposes a global regime that will monitor, oversee, and strictly regulate our planet's oceans, lakes, streams, rivers, aquifers, seabeds, coastal lands, wetlands, forests, jungles, grasslands, farmlands, deserts, tundra, and mountains. It proposes plans for cities, towns, suburbs, and villages and rural areas. It envisions a global scheme for healthcare, education, nutrition, agriculture, labor, production, and consumption, in short, everything. There is nothing on, in, over, or under the earth that doesn't fall under the purview of some part of Agenda 21. Private property ownership is the reason the United States has been the richest, freest nation in the world. And I find it very significant that as private property comes under attack through sustainable development, that our country is also becoming less wealthy and less free. It's time, ladies and gentlemen, that we have a government that treats property owners like owners, not chattel to be pushed around on their whim. It's time to start treating property owners like adults. It's yours. And when they start saying, well, your grass has to be this high, oh, you can't trim that tree, or you can't build another building here, they're treating you like children. All one-size-fits-all plan. You know what? One size doesn't fit all. All through the history of human civilization, we've had neighbors who didn't get along. And we've had nuisance laws that allowed them, if somebody has a bright light, a loud music, an old stinky pig farm, whatever the case may be, that's affecting this guy's property, he has recourse in the courts. You know what the best recourse is? He walks over and says, Charlie, can you turn the light off at night? It's in my bedroom window, for crying out loud. Oh, I didn't know. Sorry. Problem solved. Do we need a planning board for that? No. But that's what they're doing. They're treating you like children. And they'll call you children. This is something they talk about in the back rooms about you. That you're silly children who don't know what's good for you. Do we have to take it? No. Can we stop it? Yes, we can. We can do it as free individuals, free of government oppression. One fact is clear. You cannot implement sustainable development without diminishing property rights. Stand up for property rights, and we can stop sustainable development. Allow individuals the opportunity to stand on their own, to achieve their own hopes and dreams without interference. Private property ownership and its unrestricted use is the foundation for a nationwide revolution of freedom. Demand it. You know, I know it's hard. After what we've gone through the last few weeks, you get discouraged. You feel hopeless. You believe that we've lost our precious republic. But you know what? I'm the Pollyanna of this movement. Because what I recognize are little victories are victories. And we need to build on those victories. Too many people in our movement want to come down and sign a petition or wave a sign or make a phone call and say, well, I tried. Nothing happened. We're too quick to be discouraged. We're too quick. We want everything done at once. We want one plan, end it, out of here. It's not going to happen. A little bit of victory here and a little bit there. Let me tell you something. We have achieved in the last, since 2011, ICLEI, the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, made it its mission, after Agenda 21 was introduced, to go around the world and introduce Agenda 21 and implement it in every community in the world. They had achieved over 600 American cities who were paying them dues to bring in websites and statistics and training programs and newsletters and all this kind of thing. In 2011, one county commissioner in Carroll County, Maryland, Richard Rothschild, stood up and he said no. He put together a team of guys to run for county commission, and they all won on the Agenda 21 Sustainable Development issue. The first thing they did, they became the first city in the nation, first county in the nation, to kick ICLEI out and end that membership. The second thing they did was fire the sustainability manager. And then they took the development plan that the Planning Commission was putting together, and they said, you take this back and don't bring it back to us again until it adheres to the Constitution of the United States and it protects private property rights. That was one county. Since that day, over 150 cities in this country, or counties, have rescinded their membership in ICLEI. The head of ICLEI USA told an associate of mine, not knowing who he was, we're terrified of these people. We can't get another city to join us. They made us political poison. We don't know what to do. That's a victory. That is what we have to grow on. That's what we have to build on. And you are a shining example of that pushback, and I'm so proud of what you accomplished here. You know what I think? I think the most unique thing that you did was to make it mandatory that if this community is going to take another HUD grant, that they got to ask you first. You got to have a vote. That is absolutely historic. That is revolutionary, and I spread that all over the country to encourage other people to do that. We are challenging the planners, legislators. This is what's new. Legislators are starting to call me. I never had that before. They call me and say, I just got elected. What do I do to stop this? I'll tell them a few things. It's kind of funny. I'll tell them some things to do, and I'll get a phone call back a couple weeks later saying, okay, I did that. Now what do I do? Well, let's see. I'm trying now to put together a training seminar to bring these elected officials who already work with us together under one roof, around one table, to put together not a one-size-fits-all bill. It's not going to work to put a one-size-fits-all bill that we're going to end Agenda 21 and protect property rights. First of all, these bills rarely define their terms. So the other side, who never uses the term Agenda 21, says, oh, this isn't that, this is just local. It doesn't work. Too many people don't know what private property rights are. And if you do one bill, then they have one target to go after. They can put all their forces together to take out that one bill. State Representative Matt Shea in the state of Washington is my model. He has put together a freedom coalition in the Washington legislature. And everything they do is designed to reduce the size, the reach, the power, the cost of government. And last year, in the legislature, they introduced 64 bills to do just that, coming from every direction. They got hearings on 44 of those bills, and they got 14 of them passed. This year, they did it again. Last week, they just stopped an increase in the gas tax. 1,000 pinpricks coming at them from every direction is the answer. And that's what we're working to try to put together. And I just a few weeks ago, for the first time ever, I was elected to address the state legislature of Augusta, Maine. And I was able to talk directly to them about Agenda 21 and smart growth. That has never happened before. The last I heard, the bill had passed the House, and they needed 5 more votes in the Senate to get it through. Even if we don't pass it this year, that is an astounding victory, and we need to take it as a victory. We are learning new tactics and legislative plans to knock out our Agenda 21 policies. I've got back here on my table some manuals. So I've got a little booklet here that has almost everything that I've told you and how to fight back and things to do with that. I have them here. I have my newsletters here. Please take them. Because here's the bottom line. A revolution has begun, and you felt it here. The fight starts on the local level. And my friends, if we can maintain freedom in our own community, we can do it as a nation. Thank you.
Floor is open for questions and answers.
I was talking on talk radio this morning with Dr. Sandra Stosky, and she's with this Common Core. She's against the Common Core initiative. She said, well, if you go to a meeting tonight in Rinch, tell the people that they must call Senator Shaheen and Senator Ayotte and do not authorize the Education Act.
Yeah. That's that Education Act, clear into the 1980s, has been used to push all this along. I was fighting back then to fight school to work and goals 2000 and all that. Common Core is nothing more than all that on steroids, and it just they keep coming. They got, they'll sit there in those back rooms and they'll say, "We got away with this. How about this? Let's see what they do with that." They're waiting for you to stand up and say, "No, we never do." Not us, but legislators and so forth. But Common Core is the education curriculum of Agenda 21. Its whole purpose is to change the attitudes, values, and beliefs of the children that you have instilled in them to make sure they are the perfect global citizen, or as I put it, the perfect global village idiot. And that's exactly what they're working towards. Yeah.
I've been seeing also this tiny house movement. You know, people are buying these building these very small homes. And to me, I don't know, I'm seeing that as a real debasement of our standard of living. That people are starting to accept that, wow, yeah, I could live in this 400 square foot house and not have a mortgage and this and that. But I mean, this is training people to think that they should not aspire to have something big, something nice, something they can entertain their friends in, I don't understand it. But
Yeah.
it's,
Well, and the small cars, the electric vehicles, and all this kind of stuff. It's all the same. Take a look. How many of you have children in school? Have you looked in their books? Have you looked in their books? Look what these books say. I mean, of course, we all know about Common Core math and the craziness with that and everything, but almost every page is about, you can go through math programs and you can go through grammar and literature, and every one of them will have some kind of a story in there about the heroic actions of the Sierra Club or something. It is brainwashing. It is changing their attitudes, values, and beliefs. It is behavior modification. And all these children have come through. If you're 40 years or younger, you've been through this. Everybody in this country, practically, at 40 years or younger, have been in some sort of this. And the younger you are, the stronger it's been. You've now got generations that are just coming into the workforce, just beginning to buy homes, just beginning to try to build their lives, who have been totally indoctrinated with this stuff. And they'll sit there and go, oh, we can't do that. We can't, our carbon footprint, we've got to be careful. And so they've been indoctrinated to have, tiny little home, oh, you're a hero. A Prius, you're a hero. So this is thinking. When I was testifying in Maine, the representative there, who represented Portland, said, well, I've got all of these people flocking into Portland who want our smart growth community. They want to have the community, the apartments and all this kind of, the bikeways, walking to everything. The fact is, first of all, they've been indoctrinated to think that's the best thing. But the second thing is, that's all they've got offered. They have made it so you can't buy a single family home in these areas because it's too expensive. And so that's all they have. And so you've got the millennials who are buying, or who are renting. They're not even buying anymore. This is all, first it's what they're offered. Second of all, actually first of all, it's the indoctrination that they've had, that they're thought to think that way. And that's what it's about. Yeah, you had
Could you tell me what we have here, because I think Ridge needs to do more work. Planned Unit Residential Development, PURD, and is that part of
Yes.
21?
Yes,
It is.
yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. Wonderful.
So they won't stop. That's the thing. That's why I wanted to come here tonight. I wanted to talk to you because you've done magnificent work. Don't go home. They are waiting for you to go home. They are excited that you're going to go home and not pay any more attention. And when you bring that up, you go to them and they go, oh, no, this isn't that.
Oh,
Really?
any of our planning board members here? Not a one.
Oh, they never come to hear me. Turn to stone, yeah.
First of all, I've moved here from Seattle, and they are considering not giving any more single-family housing permits in Seattle. It's a new thing. Yeah, I just saw that in the news. But also, our electric company has changed names, it's now Eversource. And I have started getting letters about my usage compared to the 100 other units near me. And that mine is more than these houses.
Good for you.
And I know, yeah. And so, I mean, it's creeping me out. Now I understand why. But it does make me question, what is the difference between all of this behavioral kind of thing and good common sense, clean environment stuff? I mean, because clean water is a good thing.
Sure.
But at what point do you know this is Agenda 21 and this is common sense, clean water,
See,
clean?
this is how they work on us. Because we all want a clean environment. Nobody wants, the Cuyahoga River in Ohio caught on fire. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants trash all around. Nobody wants dirty air. So they grab hold of that and they use that. They're still using the image of Smokey the Bear and, you know, the Indian with the tear and all that, and it all, you know, drains on us. So they use that as the bait, as the excuse to pull you in because you're already there. You know, you see these commercials on television every night about the poor dogs and cats that are being abused. I don't know anybody who isn't sitting there bawling as they watch these commercials. They're very effective. You know, it's guilt, it's fear, it's your heartstrings that they pull at. But first of all, the greatest conservationists, environmentalists in this country are farmers. They wouldn't be in business if they didn't take care of the land, and they love the land. I've never met a farmer yet who wanted to be out of business, out of farming. They sucker them in through conservation easements, saying, your land will always be a farm. Oh, I want to make sure that is. Really? You know what happens when you have a conservation easement? Now you have a land trust who is telling them what they're going to do on their farm, how, in many cases, what kind of crops they can grow, if any at all. They do it in perpetuity, forever. I've got a document from Ohio on conservation easements that said conservation easements will be in perpetuity to the United States of America or its successors. The United States can collapse, but that conservation easement is going to be there. This is insanity. This is what we have. You have to start to look at, you said common sense, and the freedom of choice. And as I said before, the idea that they'll use all these excuses. In Oklahoma, I helped them put together a piece of legislation on this, and I gave them a definition. We have a definition of property rights. In fact, let me read it to you because this is vitally important. Let's see here. This is written by a Supreme Court justice in the state of Washington, and he wrote it because they were starting to have all these challenges and on property rights issues, and they realized they didn't have a good definition of property rights. And so he said, we got to have one. So he put this together, and this is key. Quote, property in a thing consists not merely in its ownership and possession, but in the unrestricted right of use, enjoyment, and disposal. Anything which destroys any of the elements of property to that extent destroys the property itself. The substantial value of property lies in its use. If the right of use be denied, the value of the property is annihilated and ownership is rendered a barren right. Now, I gave that definition to legislators in the state of Oklahoma, Unfortunately, he only used the first sentence, which talked about unrestricted right of use. We got it through the House Committee. We got it through the House, and it headed for the Senate, and then they discovered it, and the uproar began. The sustainabilists went to every single county, city council, and they said, if this bill passes, none of you will have a job, because unrestricted use will be anarchy, will be chaos. People will build dirty, stinking pig farms next door to you. And they rose up and they defeated it. This is what they do. They work on those emotions. And as I said, in most cases, we've got nuisance laws when things like that happen. It's not about that. It is about control. So when you begin to see what these policies say, what they're talking about, when they start talking about in perpetuity, when they start saying you shall or you will, not you shall, you will, those are rules and regulations that ain't ever going to go away. Government never gives back what it takes. And you've got to stay on top of that. So, there is common sense. There is, we've always done this. How did we have communities for thousands of years growing, and all of a sudden now we need the guidance of who? Somebody who's never been there? You know how many environmental regulations hurt the environment? Number one, if you go out in the woods and you find an eagle feather, you are subject to a fine and imprisonment. But they can put up a forest of windmills who chop them up like Cuisinarts in the air, and that's okay, because that's for the environment. It's a lie. It's all a lie. And when you begin to understand that, then you know how to fight back. Here's one thing you can do. As you go into them, I have and you can find this on my website, we have a document. It is a resolution for, what do I do with it? I always have these things just so I can grab them right out, you know what I mean? Let's see. Anyway, here it is. Resolution to protect citizens' property rights. And here's how you do this. This document, you go into your planners, you go into your city councilman, and you say to them, gentlemen, ladies, as you're bringing these plans that you're outlining into our community, these planners, I just have one question for you. What guarantees do I have that you'll protect my property rights? And I'll tell you, to a man, to a woman, they will say, of course we will. Hey, I'm a property owner too. You say, I'm really happy to hear you say that. Smile at them. Say, but ladies, gentlemen, I'd like to have it in writing, please. Now watch them scramble. All the NGOs that you don't see in the shadows. You know what this says? This says, if they're going to discuss plans that are going to affect your property, they'll bring you into the discussion. It says, if they decide to go ahead and do something about that, they're going to take your property for a part of it or whatever, they'll pay you for it. And it says, they cannot send their agents onto your property for any purpose without your permission. That's what this says. There's a radical document. But this will drive them nuts, because they know you cannot implement Agenda 21 without damaging or eliminating private property. So, when you're trying to decide, is this good for the environment? Is this not? What's it do to private property? First and foremost, what does it do to that? And the only other thing I can tell you is to research it. All the lies about global warming today, there is not an ounce of credibility today in the entire climate change argument. Not an ounce of credibility. It has been debunked over and over again, and their answer, and whenever we say something, they start yelling racist at us. Well, on the climate change issue, denier. See, they use that to make you sound like a Holocaust denier. Denier, it's what they do. Their whole purpose is to discredit you. And they have tried to do it to me time and time and time again, and I take strength from it because I consider the source. and I fight back. Who had their, yeah, back here?
Yeah. Is New Hampshire's current use a nefarious way to get the foot further in the door?
I say that again, I'm sorry.
Is New Hampshire's current use law for land another nefarious way for Agenda 21 to get its foot in the door?
I think it is. I don't know it specifically, but from what, I'm taking from the title and so forth, yeah. I'm assuming from that saying, okay, you've already got this, but you can't do this because you're using it this way.
Well, they offer you significant tax reductions with the promise of don't develop that land, don't do anything with it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, all right. So selling your development rights, things like that. Yeah. Absolutely. That's part of it. Absolutely. Getting people to sell or to not allowed to use your property for all these things. Yeah. That's most definitely. Yeah. So let's see.
You had mentioned comprehensive development plans. Now, those have also morphed into what they call master plans for towns and cities?
It's the same thing. Yeah.
Exactly. This town is now in the process of looking over their master plan to rewrite it, to get rid of it, or whatever. In the state, we're required to have 2 sections, although they recommend 15 more. 2 sections are recommended, the vision statement and the land use section. As I look around the room, I see at least 3 people who managed to squeeze themselves onto that committee, and I know they have 2 other votes going in along with them. Could you give any recommendations to those people as to what to put into a master plan and what not to put into a master plan?
It's my resolution for the protection of private property rights. Number 1, put that in there. I want to hear any words in any of these plans about we're working with the stakeholders. You'll see it right in there. Has anybody seen that in the plans? We're working with the stakeholders.
Oh, yeah.
And see, you think it's you. It's not. Stakeholders are the non-governmental organizations. They call them that. And I have heard them in these meetings. Well, we're working with the stakeholders. They're not stakeholders. They're carpetbaggers. They don't belong here. They're probably not even citizens here. No more of that. What you did about controlling them from taking HUD grants, expand it to any kind of grant. Because they'll slip it. If they know you've got a restriction on that, they'll just bring it over here for the EPA. They'll bring it over to the Department of Transportation. So, watch those things. Watch those catchwords. Rewriting the plan is the most dangerous thing that's happening across the country. A lot of these plans were written, 10 or 15, 20 years ago. And so that we're just rewriting it. Oh, no, we're on the plan. We're putting it together. You know what's happened in the last 15 to 20 years with all this new stuff they're pouring in there? That's what they're going to put in there. So I have a manual that I don't have it with me. We put together the Stop Agenda 21 Action Kit. There's one of the manuals in there. A gentleman named Henry Lamb. Does anybody know his name, Henry Lamb? Henry Lamb was my mentor. Henry Lamb is the man who discovered Agenda 21 and brought it to me and a bunch of others. We had a big meeting that just absolutely boggled our minds, but that's where we began the fight. Henry took 2 different comprehensive development plans for different cities. One's in South Carolina, I forget the other one, Georgia, I think it was. And he went down side by side the comparison. This is Agenda 21. And he did that a few years ago, so there's new stuff now. But those are good things to take a look at. I can get you a copy of that if you'd like. So, yeah, just be careful. As I said in the very beginning, that's why I wanted to come here tonight, because you did something wonderful, but they will not let you have it. They won't let you sleep. Don't sleep. Stay aware. Stay on top of this stuff, and don't let them move forward. The state of Florida passed legislation that released communities from having to do comprehensive development plans. Go to the state legislature and have somebody introduce something to that effect. That'll get you out from under that comprehensive plan. Yeah.
In my view, this is regionalism is communism, and I was wondering why you think that it's not called communism. Why we don't call it communism?
Because it has a negative content or context. You would, if you started saying, we are the proud communists of New Hampshire, It ain't gonna get you very far. I have a document that I produced. It's an article called The Dawn of the Age of Communism. And in it we talk, the gentleman did some research on this. He coined the term communism. And he believes, from his research, that Mikhail Gorbachev deliberately got rid of the Soviet Union because it was an albatross around their necks. We had the entire arsenal of the United States and NATO and everything else aimed at them. And you mentioned communism, Soviet Union, everybody in America went, ooh. You take all that off. You take that albatross, you kill it all. And what happened to all the leaders of the Soviet Union, including Mikhail Gorbachev? They went in the environmental movement. And you read the words that they advocate, they're identical. So the word isn't communism anymore, it's environmentalist. So, yeah.
I just wanted to piggyback on something you were talking about with education and 40 years younger and how indoctrinated they are. And I just wanted to kind of echo that from some experiences that I have had. I recently went back for a second degree, so I was surrounded by 18 to 21-year-olds for quite a few years, and they don't really know what the Constitution really affords them because they're not taught. And I think as a challenge for everyone in this room is to talk to young people so they know, because they are not being taught. Appalled at the history books at the high school level, how little they're taught about that, and there's a reason for it.
Sure, absolutely.
And I went to, they had a forum at this college that I went to. It was Constitution Day. It was in 2010 when I really started to realize something was changing. So I went, oh, this will be interesting, I'll go. All professors about tearing down the Constitution. That's all they talked about. And this is what they're teaching these college students.
Sure.
I was asked to go to a forum. Oh, you'll get extra credit if you come. And the name of it was Hidden in Plain Sight. Karl Marx was on the PowerPoint, and it was all about, every time they mentioned capitalism, greed was either in front of it or behind it. It was all about getting rid of private property. The multicultural cabinet member of this college stood up and said to these students, how can anybody own land, sea, or water? It's like owning a people. So these kids are, and they're being taught to be global citizens, so they are being deeply indoctrinated.
Absolutely, absolutely, that's absolutely true. And so when you have this, now look what you see in the news today. Look at these riots and demonstrations, and this idiotic move to get rid of the Confederate flag and all these kind of things. This is a destruction of a culture. That's what you're seeing. It's genocide of the American culture. And at the same voices that are saying, thank you. The same voices at the same time, Confederate flag, American flag, racist, 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 racist. I want to, it's just, it is so hard to deal with all that, to be called these names, but that's all they've got. Yeah.
Finally. Go ahead.
Okay, nobody ever brings this up, and I need to bring it up. Geoengineering. Do you know about it, and is it part of Agenda 21?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so you do know about it, because nobody talks about it. And when you do talk about it, they look at you like you have three heads. What's the sky? What's the sky? No, they're raining poison down on us.
Yeah.
Because one weatherman I watched 4 years ago, one weatherman in Arizona said, those who control the weather control the food, and those who control the food control the people.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And I've been a farmer my whole life, and I'm really upset. I go up, and the trees are dying, and nobody says anything.
Yeah. And the amazing thing about that, they keep telling you this is for the environment, in the forests around the world, around the country, trees die, and you're not allowed to move them out. That's natural. There's 10 foot of kindling on the floor of every forest in this country. Why are they burning so hot today? Because they've got 10 feet of kindling on. It is so hard, so tight, and there even little animals can't move. With another person, we went through Nevada, and we could see, as you're driving along, the trees are sick and dying and falling down. And here we are, just hug a tree. You know, well, help the tree. Get environmentalists out of the way. You know, I'll tell you just a funny little side thing on that. You hear them, one of the main tenets of sustainable farming or sustainable development is get rid of grazing cattle. Why? Because of cow flatulence. They tell us it's a huge portion of this, you know, the CO2. Let me tell you a funny thing. The truth of the matter is, 1/4 of flatulence south from the earth comes from termites. Now, when you have the trees rotting on the floor of the forest, what do you get? Termites and more dead trees. But the environmentalists are helping the planet. My friends, most environmentalists have never been in the environment. They are idiots. They have no idea what they're talking about. They live in high-rises in New York City and tell us how overpopulated the world is. Have they never been in an airplane? Look down, dummy. There's nobody down there for thousands of acres.
That's right.
But they're the ones making these plans. The next time you see an environmentalist, laugh at him. Because the poor fool has no idea how stupid he is. He has no idea how to help the environment. Wait, lady back here.
Yes. Have you been invited by any presidential upcoming candidates to speak with them directly, to educate them on Agenda 21?
Let me tell you what happened. I haven't yet. We've got a plan. I'm glad you brought that up, by the way.
Good.
I've got a plan, but in the last election, 2012, when the candidates were going around talking to audiences, people on their own would get up and say, what about Agenda 21? And people, the candidates would go, blah, 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 blah. They didn't have any idea what they were talking about. And then the audience would yell, call Tom DeWeese! This happened all over the country. One day my phone rings, and it's one of the staffers for Newt Gingrich. We've been hearing about this Agenda 21 thing, and everybody says we need to talk to you. Can you tell me what this is? And I had a conversation with him. 5 days later, I was in Montana, and the internet lit up. Newt Gingrich went on Sean Hannity's show, and he said, I want to talk about this Agenda 21 thing. And then he brought it up in a debate. So I have, based on that, created 3 questions that we're passing out to people across the country to ask in every one of these candidates' nights that that deal with the 3 E's of Agenda 21. 3 E's, the logo for Agenda 21 is 3 connecting circles. And the 3 of them are marked social equity, environmental, and economics. Why can't I find anything here tonight? Anyway, here it is. This is the logo. You'll see this. You can look in education documents and so forth. They use the same 3-tiered thing. They don't always say the same thing, but this is the one they most often use for Agenda 21. So I took these 3 questions based on those 3 E's. And here are the 3 questions. If elected, what actions will you take to protect the unrestricted right of use, enjoyment, and disposal of private property by its owners? Wow. If elected, what actions will you take to eliminate these massive grant programs and to stop federal efforts to enforce creation of non-elected boards, councils, and regional governments? Social justice question, and I based this on education rather than just Agenda 21 specifically, because we talked about, social justice redistribution of wealth, or what they're doing to the kids in the schools. This is a social justice question. If elected, will you take action to shut down the Federal Department of Education and return education policy to the states, making sure to end these orchestrated attacks on the attitude, values, and beliefs of children? By the way, who wants to make copies for everybody? Somebody volunteer. So,
Can you scan it on email?
so I think it's on our website.
I will scan it on email.
But these, if you started to ask these 3 questions, I'm sorry,
The
what?
one on property.
This was one in there. Oh, you want the definition? It's in that book. But I have that.
So the one,
Yeah.
the one that you mentioned.
If you start to, they're all in there, they're all there. If you start to ask these questions every single time these candidates get up to speak, how do you think they're going to answer that question? Blah, 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 blah. Eventually, they're going to catch on. I need to find an answer to this if they keep asking it. And what have you done? You've educated the candidate. He may still be a bamboozler, but you have, in the beginning, you have outed them to being totally stupid to these issues that affect the most people in this country. One of the interesting things, I'm not saying anything pro or con about Donald Trump, but I think it's really interesting what he's doing to the presidential debate, because he is bringing up issues the rest of them are scared to death to talk about, and he doesn't care.
That's right.
He's doing this. One final thing, let me do this and I'll get off of here, because I think we'll go home. Next week, I am introducing an international statement of principles on private property rights. Last fall, I went to Maine, met with people there, delegates there in this meeting from Australia, the United States, and Canada. And we put together the International Property Rights Association. And we believe that private property ownership is the way to end poverty and the way to build freedom and independence around the world. So, we have created a statement of principles to say, what we are about. We've created a new symbol called people, property, freedom. And what we're going to do is introduce this to property rights people across the country. If they sign on to our statement of principles, then they'll be allowed to use this symbol in their websites, in their communications, however they use them, worldwide. Eventually, we hope to find businesses that will sign on to this as well, so that you know who are the good guys to deal with. They put it in their advertising. I'm releasing this next week.